For this screencast, we're going to talk about how to complete the Layout 2 assignment. So this assignment is to make a poster for an event or an organization around campus. My example doesn't specifically apply to campus, but it is a poster and we can learn from how to create one. So this poster is pretty basic, mainly types, colored blocking, and then an image. Pretty simple to create. So what is the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to start by creating a new file here in InDesign. I could go up to File, New here, and do it that way, New Document. Or I can do it the faster way, the way I would normally do it, which is to do Command-N on a Mac or Control-N on a PC. I'm going to set the size. This assignment size is 11 by 17, which is also known as tabloid. I could also type in 11IN, making sure to type that in since this is defaulted to picas. And then I have my exact size. As to the margins, it depends on what you want to do. Usually something like 0.5 inches is sufficient for the margins. We like to keep all what we call live copy within the margins, so we try to give ourselves enough space. I only need one page. I'll turn off facing pages just like I did in Layout 1 because there is only one page. And I'm going to click OK. So InDesign is meant to be an assembly sort of program where we put together everything we've maybe made asset-wise in Photoshop and Illustrator to make final compositions. It has far more text tools and text options than anything we can find in Illustrator. I would still create stuff in Illustrator, and actually on this poster, this piece was created in Illustrator, and we'll talk about how to place that in a file. So I want to come back here. I have the start of my layout. What do I want to do next? So I've already created a folder on my desktop for this project. I have this final file I was showing you in there. I have my poster text that I need for the poster, and I have my image here that I called Flower with Drip that I created in Illustrator. We won't really go into how to make that, but if you're interested, it's pretty simple to draw it. You'll notice it's not some perfect, gorgeous flower. It's more abstracted, which gives us some leeway. So for right now, to get my text in here, I'm going to open this text file. I could place this text, but there's very little, so I'm probably going to just copy and paste it to get it into the pieces I need. So if we look back at this original final file, we'll notice the Twilight Theater and all of that information is in one box. So I will copy that portion here from the text document. I'm using Command-C or Control-C on a PC to copy the text. I'm going to come here to the new document, draw a text box, doesn't matter where. I'm just trying to get the text in right now, and I'm going to place the text. I also could have typed this text in if I wanted, but it's faster, and normally, at least for me, I get stuff from clients, so they provide me with the text. The next one I want to copy is this Royal Shakespeare Company. Again, Command-C, come back here to InDesign, and Command-V pastes. You can also go up to Edit and do the copy and paste that way. The last things I'm going to do is Romeo and Juliet are all in their own text box to execute this layout. So I'm going to copy that, come back here, again, paste it, and just repeat that for the last three pieces I need, or the last two pieces I need. Alright, so I have all my text here. I can start to place it and kind of get an idea how to match this layout. We'll notice this is down, if we want to pull a guide here, just about 2.5. And then this one here is at about the 14 mark. And those were my original guides that I'm turning off, but for your sake, we'll just keep it simple here. So if I want to in this document, I can pull myself some guides, and the first thing I'm going to do before I do that is change my rulers over to inches. You can either right click on a PC or if you've enabled that on your Mac, or you can control click if you have not. Select inches by just clicking here on the ruler, and that'll set us over to use a more probably a measurement you're more comfortable with. So I'll put a guideline here to help myself out at about 2.5. If you're creating your own poster, you can do kind of just judge stuff. You don't necessarily have to use guidelines. I'm a fan, and the initial design was sketch first, so I had some kind of concept of what I wanted to do. And the font for this document that I selected already was Helvetica Bold, so I'm going to locate that particular font here. We're using the control panel. As I've said before, any program that we're using right now from Adobe has this control panel that gives us the basic options. So I want Helvetica New Bold. I convert it, and in a second we'll make it the right size. I'm going to repeat that for all of these because everything used that font. And you notice I just typed the first few letters here, and Indesign gives us the most likely options. If you don't know what font, you could always scroll through. You also can use what's called Typekit. Adobe gives you access to thousands of fonts here using Typekit. Most are free, some require payment. You just can look and see, but it will automatically sync to your account if you use this. So that's an option too. You can also go out and download free fonts. If you do that and you're unaware of how to install a font, you can ask your instructor or whoever is staffing the lab that day, and they can assist you. It's not very difficult to add them to either type of computer. So I'm going to continue doing this to get all of these converted. And I could have put everything in one text box and then changed it and then split it. It's whatever work process works best for you. I like having everything separate. I could have also selected all of them and gone up and changed it that way too. All right, so next step. So we noticed here back in this file, Romeo and Juliet are pretty big. They've also actually been converted from being type, and we'll talk about that in order to do this sort of center. The counters and all of these are red. So we'll start in this one. We might as well just convert these two to outlines to start with. So what we do, we select the text, we come up here to type and select create outline. So now InDesign does not think of this as type anymore. We'll notice I no longer see the type options across the top. I'm going to hold shift and scale this to maintain the proportions. I do not want to stretch this, but I do want to get it the right size, and I do want it to bleed a little bit. So that's another important thing to consider. You'll notice here it bleeds off. It's also a little tighter, so I can adjust as I need to and kind of compress letters. Let me just make this the full way I need it. And this has left it all linked together, so I can either right click or I can control click, and I should be able to break this apart. The other thing I could have done if I didn't want to wait to do this, I wanted to keep it a text box. Let me just go back a couple of steps. And I'm just using Command Z when I do that, or Control Z on a PC. I could have also, made my text box larger here and made it bigger. And then just kind of guess what size my font needed to be. So 150 isn't big enough. You could use the arrows. You can keep guessing. Some of design is not exact. I would love to tell you it was, but you need to process and kind of figure out for yourself what maybe works, what the best option is. And that is often just a guessing game here. See where I am. I'm going to make this a little tighter too. I can show you how to do that to better resemble this. We notice there's a lot less space between the letters than here. What happens in the fonts is they default to sort of a certain kerning or a certain type spacing. We can change it a couple different ways. I could click between two letters here and edit the actual kerning and figure that out, or I could highlight everything and update the tracking. Usually you want to do kerning over tracking in this case because we're making small increments and we want to kind of visually judge what they are. You also can trust your font and be happy with how your font looks. That's up to you. That falls under design decision, not so much that there's a hard and fast rule. Some of design is making choices about what you like, why you like it, and trusting that. So I'm going to continue, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because now that I reduced that spacing, I have more space to play with. But I do want it to do what we call bleed off of both sides. Because when we do anything to the edges, we always assume when it goes through and gets cut at the printer that some of it's going to get cut off. And we could repeat this with Juliet. I'm going to speed myself up a little bit here and actually copy that since I don't want the screencast to last all day. Alright, so I'm going to copy the bottom with Juliet, but we'll talk about how to do the Romeo in a second. How to make these red counters. Okay, so I have my type here. I'll get rid of those boxes. And if you've noticed, this document has these sort of ugly blue boxes right around it versus this one does not. So we can turn that off. There's a really easy way to do that. We can come up here to view, extras, hide frame edges. So now, unless I have it selected, I won't see it. So let's go down and we're going to make some changes to this box. We're going to start by making everything caps. And this little 2 capital T's up here next to the size allows us to make everything caps. I then know I want this top line to be 36 points, so I'm going to select that. The bottom is going to be 16 point. And actually we'll want to do that this way. We see my line broke, so I'm actually going to widen this just to make it the whole way. And I'm going to put it in its place. So we notice it's down closer towards the Anne Juliet part. So I'm going to put it there. It will ultimately become white, but right now, until I have the black background, we're going to go with this. I'm going to select this line, also make it all caps. This one happens to be 15 point. I don't really care about the leading in this case because it's just one line. And again, we'll put it in the approximate place. You'll see that these two are lining up. And InDesign should help you if you go to move this. Kind of fill in, it automatically kind of made that line to show me how to line up with this. I can then, to do the black box, I'll come over here and I will select the rectangle tool because in the last demo I did, I used an ellipse. It was hiding. Anytime you see this little triangle in the corner, it means there's more things there. If I click and hold, I can access it. So I'm going to select the rectangle tool and I'm going to make a rectangle that also bleeds off the page. So it goes past the edges. As to how much, it depends. Some printers only require a 16th, some like an 1/8. I usually err on an 1/8, give them more than they need rather than less. I'm going to change this here, swap the fill and the stroke. We now see it's covered the black type. I could go up to Object and Arrange, send it back. I also can go ahead and either control click or right click on this and get the Arrange option also to send it back. I still can't see that other type because it was black. So if I click on that text box, I can make it white. And you do want to make sure you're actually highlighting the type, because if you just come up here and you've selected the box and click paper, the box is white, not the text. So you want to make sure to highlight the text to guarantee that it's white. And white up here in Illustrator or in InDesign is called paper, because normally you 9 out of 10 times print on the paper, and it's white, so we just call it paper. The other thing I want to do now is I want to place that image in here. So in order to do that, I can go to File, Place, or Command D on a Mac, Control D on a PC. So I'm going to place my image. We always want to place, not copy paste. Number one, copy pasting doesn't do a proper resolution. Number two, it doesn't maintain a link with the original file. The nice part here is that if I go in and make changes to this, the link panel will allow me to update it without having to replace it or do anything else. So I have this image now, and the default sort of preview gives me a little sort of thumbnail of the image. I don't want to fill the text box or this black box, so I'm actually going to click over here in the gray. If I clicked on this black, it would try to place it in the black, and I want this to be a separate element from that. So in terms of placement, I know from my original, I want my drop here to go on top of the eye in place of the dot of the eye. I'm going to go back and look. I want to move up this line a little bit. So this isn't exact, but it's pretty close for the time period here. And I can turn off my margins and my guides and things to see sort of what it's looking. So you see I've gotten it in a matter of a few seconds pretty close. I'm going to come back here and adjust. I want to move this around here. I want to actually tap down the "and" a little bit. And then this black box, bring it down so it's hitting the top of the Juliet. And then move the "and" until the "and" is just touching the black without going over it. So in this case, this letter, we convert to outline, and then the counter can be extracted. So let's go back and we'll do the type create outlines. So we've gone ahead and created the outline here. I could do a couple things. I can actually draw red boxes and send them behind there. That's an easy way if you're not quite sure how to do the rest of it. It's not necessarily the best way. And you do then have to make sure you've sent it behind, because if I draw an ellipse, you know, it's hard to kind of match that shape exactly. If I did it this way, and let's make it this red color, it would obviously be cutting into the O, so I could send it to the back. Range, send to back, and put it back there. But the better way would actually be to unlock the counter and break this apart. But in a matter of minutes, without going into all that, I've gotten my poster together. So I'd want to save it. And you may want to save sooner so that you don't forget. Because the nice part, InDesign usually if you do crash will recover it, but only if you've saved it in most cases. So layout 2, project, I'm going to save in this folder. Now when you want to submit this for critique, you're going to make it a PDF, which we do file, export to make a PDF. And we'll select print. We really don't need to mess with options right now. The default should be perfectly fine to you. You'll click export and it'll make you a PDF in here of your poster. And that's what you'll submit to critique. When you're ready to turn this in, we want to go ahead and do file, package. So this will gather all my fonts, all the images used, everything I need to turn in. Something to see here, you'll notice I have no issue with RGB, so make sure all the assets that you create elsewhere are in CMYK. And all your colors in here should be in CMYK. All my fonts are linked correctly, so I can go ahead and click package. If I was sending this to a printer, we would actually fill this out, but for our purposes, we can just hit continue. And then it's going to give you an option where to save this folder it's going to make. For right now, I'll just save it in my Layout 2 folder, and we'll notice it's set to copy fonts and link graphics. It will also make an IDML file, which means if you were giving this to someone with a lower version of this, they could go ahead and open it still. And then it will make a PDF too for your instructor. So you can go ahead and save that, hit the package, and then the font warning, you can just hit OK. You could also check don't show again. It always tells you that because fonts aren't free and you're not supposed to just give them to people, but it's fine for the purposes of this. And then we've created this folder. We have links. You'll want to move that or images. You can call it either one. You notice my original was called images. It's got the PDF, it's got the actual file, the IMD file, the instructions, and then the fonts. We don't need the instructions, but you can load everything else on or this entire folder over. That's something to make sure of. But with the assignment too, as I said, these assets can be created elsewhere. So you could use a photo you've taken, you can use an illustration you've created. You can do some basic drawing here. You'll notice some tools similar to Illustrator. I still prefer to draw in Illustrator and bring it in. It's up to you. I would remind you though that all assets used in this, all images, need to be created by you. You cannot just go out and Google search to find what you want. You need to come up with something and it needs to be your own. We want to get you used to copyright law and you cannot just take an image from Google. Plus, the images on the web, especially photos, are not the proper resolution. Illustrator doesn't matter for resolution because it is vector-based, so it's using math to come up with it. It can scale to any size. But photos cannot. So you're going to want to make sure photos are 300 dpi, as well as the CMYK. If you're unsure how to do that, you can find me or one of the other faculty. One of the lab assistants can assist you with how to figure that out. Photoshop can tell you what the resolution, what the size of your images are. But you can see this is a very simple graphic. The poster is mainly type, but it's impactful. It would catch your attention if it was hanging up. So you don't need a lot of fancy things to make a really good poster. You just need a pretty strong concept, something bold. Don't get caught up with all the text doesn't have to be huge because the idea is a hierarchy. Something catches my attention, draws me closer. If I care about it, I'll read the smaller text. So you really want to focus on what will I pay attention to, what will get my attention when you're making a poster. And to use the entire space, you know, I didn't group it all in one tiny little spot. I balanced everything throughout the composition. I can, even with the title broken up, I can still read it. I can clearly see the contact info if I do want to go to this event, who it's sponsored by, everything is kind of there. And that is how you complete the Layout 2 assignment. I look forward to seeing everybody's poster.